Welcome to the Medium in the Middle podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie, the medium in the middle. On this podcast, I share my journey as a developing psychic medium, as a Reiki master teacher, as an Akashic record practitioner, and anything else that's thrown my way. Hello, Middlers. Welcome to episode 157. My name is Stephanie. I am the medium in the middle. If you are a new listener, I tell my full spiritual journey, how everything started happening, how I started to realize what was happening, how I started to listen to my intuition from episode 1. So I do recommend, if you want some help with what you're going through right now, listen to episode 1 through 10. It's very helpful. Then cherry pick based on what you're going through, what you need. There's lots of episodes, depending on where you are, that should hopefully make you feel not so alone, seen, and understood to help you along in whatever you're developing or going through. For me, it was spirit and Reiki and intuition, but hopefully my stories help you along your journey. Now, if you've been here for a while, you know that one of my favorite topics to talk about is manifesting. And my favorite thing I like to manifest is money, of course. And I have so many podcasts on this. I have so many Instagram lives on this. I have so many things. I have courses on my website, but I want to talk about it in a new way that I haven't discussed on the podcast, just to kind of help you with this. And as we're still in January, the first month of the year, I know a lot of people are writing down their goals. They are manifesting. So I think this is a good time to talk about this. And I went on a little rant on Instagram, so I just want to bring that conversation here to the podcast. If you don't already follow me on Instagram, @mediuminthemiddle is my only account. There are a lot of scammers out there, so please beware. I will never ever DM you for a reading, and I will never ever DM you and say, "Hello, love, I've been called to your energy." So please know that's a scammer. But I do post a lot on my Instagram that is helpful. So I actually wanted to post this on January 3rd, but I chickened out and I didn't share it, but I want to talk about money transparency and expanding. So we're going to talk about that today. I'm not going to pull a card because I want to jump right into it. And my only announcements are Reiki trainings. I always have Reiki trainings. The next one is in March 11th and 12th. There's 2 spots left. And then if you are waiting for level 2, if you're one of my students, there's one at the end of February, which also has 2 spots left. If you are waiting for the mastermind to expand your spiritual business, that is coming very soon. I hope to launch it this week because I want to get into it right away. It just fires me up. So that will be coming. So I want to start this off with a little backstory, and then I want to answer someone's question, and then I want to give you a few examples about money manifesting, how it can be without directly making money. So this all started because I get deposits into my account from whatever I sell every single day. So if I sell 2 Reiki courses today, then that money gets deposited today. If I sell 2 appointments, I get that money today. If I sell nothing, I get $0. But I get paid from my booking system every single day, except for weekends and holidays. So if it's a weekend or a holiday, then I'll wait until the next Monday or the next business day. So on January 3rd, which was the first business day of this year, I got a pay of $3,476.22. And I was like, holy cow, like that was a good 3 days. And I wanted to screenshot it and share it on my Instagram because I was like, this is my first pay of the year. This is the money that I'm starting off on. Like, how exciting. And I wanted to be an expander because I want other people to know that this is available to them. And then I got into my fear mindset, and I started to think no, this is going to piss some people off. People are going to be angry by this. This is going to pull up people's limiting beliefs about money, and I just shouldn't do it. So I talked myself out of it, and then I was like, oh, it's been too many days. I'm not going to post about it. But then I saw this video on TikTok, and it was this girl talking about how $100,000 is not a lot of money. And the whole video was around can we please stop thinking that $100,000 is a lot of money? You need to change your mindset. all of the same stuff, right? You need to think about these things as attainable, and it's just a drop in the bucket. And then the $300,000 girl that I'm constantly talking about on this podcast, she stitched it and she was like, yes, I love this video. Like, it's all about mindset. It's all about what's available to you. She's like, we have to talk about how much money that we're making so that other people know what's available. And even though this isn't in the spiritual community directly, these are things that expand me. So I like to kind of just listen to any woman who is self-making this money, you know, without brand deals, without big ticket items like that. So naturally, watching these types of videos on TikTok also brought me to the side of TikTok where people are stitching it and saying, how can you say $100,000 is not a lot of money? That's 3 times the amount of money that I make. That's more than the average American makes. This is so privileged. And completely missing the mark that the video was about mindset, not necessarily about making that money. And I was like, you're proving her right by posting these videos saying that this makes you angry. So I wanted to talk about it on the podcast because I went on a little rant on Instagram and I got so much good feedback. I just want to give this to you in a new way. So I want to start off with some mindset work. So just be mindful that when you view $100,000 as a lot of money, this is the same as thinking of the wording of too expensive. Whatever the amount for you is, if it's $100, if it's $1,000, if it's $10,000, if it's $100,000, if it's $1 million, whatever the amount is that seems like that's unattainable for you, I just want you to think about that. And whatever something is that you think is too expensive, also think of that. So when we have this wording in our mind, we are literally telling ourselves it's unattainable for us. And you have to view and believe that this is possible for you. So I am constantly telling myself in my mind, $100,000 is not a lot of money. And I know that that's a controversial statement because obviously it is a lot of money. But if I view it as a lot of money, if I view it as something I can't have, if I view it as something so far out of my reality, then that is true. It is so far out of my reality and it's something I can never have. But if I view it as no big deal, lots of people make that money, this is a drop in the bucket for big corporations, this is available in the universe, this is possible for me, other people do it, so can I, that pulls it into my realm of possibility. The biggest thing with manifesting things that you don't believe yet is you really have to believe that it's possible for you. So I personally like to swing the pendulum in the other direction. So I've said tips like when you get a big bill, say like, oh, that's all I have to pay. You know, like I talked about how my mortgage went up $600 a month and you do work with that. Oh, it's only $600 more a month. No problem. That's fine. I can handle that. Only $600. It could have been more. But you have to train your brain to not freak out about these things. So when I got that big first pay, I had to stare at that number and be like, okay, this is how I'm starting the year. This is normal. This is regular. I always get paid this much every single day. This is amazing. And really pulling it in as not a lot of money. I was like, okay, like this is totally fine. I want to call this in all the time. And obviously, I don't get deposits of almost $3,500 every day. Yesterday was $107. But I need my mind to see this as normal because I don't want to limit my mindset. I want to give a few examples about this because there's a few ways that you can do this. And I talked about this when I bought my condo. When I had the full deposit for my condo in my bank before it went to the lawyer, I remember staring at that amount in my bank, in my checking account, and I thought to myself, I will never see this amount of money in my bank ever again. I'm just going to stare at this and enjoy this moment. And I was like, what a limiting belief. How dare I even think that? So I had to sit there and stare at my checking account with over $350,000 in it, saying, no, I'm not going to think like that. I'm going to see this money again in my bank account. This is no big deal. This is going to come back to me. And I stared at my bank account and telling myself over and over and over again, this is not a lot of money. I'll see this in my bank account again. This is no big deal. This is attainable for me. This is just the first time I'm going to see this amount of money in my bank account. I took a screenshot of my bank account at that. I'm going to call this money back into my life. But if I were to sit there and be like, holy cow, like, look at all this money in my account, I'm never going to see that again. Oh my God, it's going to be gone. It's just at the house. What you believe to be true is true. So if you think you're never ever going to see that money in your bank account again, guess what? You're never ever going to see that money in your bank account again. So really watch your wording. Don't say things are too expensive. Too expensive means it's unattainable. Say it's expensive. Say you don't want it. Say you don't want to spend money on that. Say that you don't find value in that. Say that you don't find the value matches the price tag in that. But too expensive. When you tell yourself something is too expensive, when you tell yourself you can't have something, that's making it unattainable for you, and that's where you're forming your limiting beliefs. I want to talk about this because then I got a question in my DMs asking, okay, I have a salary and I can't make more at my work. So she's like, I work for a salary. I'm a teacher. There's no bonuses. There's nothing. So how can I manifest more money? The question was like, I think I'm stuck in thinking there's no way for money to come to me. And I want to talk about this limiting belief because I'm sure a lot of us think this way. I thought this way too. And obviously, of course, you can manifest more money. But the limiting belief here is you are thinking that money only comes to you from your salary. Work is the only way that you make money. So if you believe that work is the only way that you can make money, then yes, you will be very limited in what you can manifest. I have a money manifesting course, and if one of the things that I teach in that course is to act like you can find $1 million on the floor. And realistically, are you going to find $1 million on the floor? Well, I don't want to say no. It might be possible, but probably not, right? But when you start to look for $1 million on the floor, you start to see money everywhere. You will probably find money on the floor, number one. The amount of times you guys have messaged me being like, hey, I just found $5. Hey, I just found $20. Hey, I just found this. Someone else had this big elaborate story about how they found $4,000 on the floor. I'll share that on Instagram. It's a whole story. But the point is, when you're looking for money, you find it. If you're not looking for it, or if you're only looking for it from your paycheck, you're only going to find what your paycheck says. So a few examples to help you kind of understand how money can come in a lot of different ways. And I want to give like very realistic small examples for this. So I just got a new phone, and originally I wanted the iPhone 13 because I didn't want to spend the money on the iPhone 14, and the 13 was on sale and it was going to be about $400. And I was like, yep, that's how much I want to spend on a new phone. But then I ordered the iPhone 13. I waited 2 months, ended up being discontinued. They couldn't get me one, yada, yada, yada. So I ended up having to get the iPhone 14 Pro. And it was $800 instead of $400. And I was just thinking like, oh, I really didn't want to spend $800 on a new phone, but the 13 isn't available. I want a new phone. So, abundance. And at that time, it didn't even occur to me that obviously I would sell my old phone. I ended up selling my old phone for $350. I was like, oh, wow, I never even considered the amount that I would be selling my old phone for. So my new phone ended up only costing me $450. That's only $50 more than I had originally planned to spend. And even though, yes, if I would have gotten the 13 and I would have sold my phone for $350, the new phone would have only cost me $50. I had, in my budget, was a $400 for a new phone. So I got that. And I was like, look at that abundance coming back to me. Like I just have that money coming back because I sold that phone. A few other examples about how you can manifest money and how you can kind of work on this concept is money isn't always coming from a paycheck. So for example, I've been trying to get regular facials, and I go like once every few months, and the facials are like between $150 and $200. And I've noticed a big change in my skin. I have like a lot of acne scarring, and I have a lot of flare-ups on my skin. And I've really noticed a huge difference since I started to get these regular facials. So it's something that I've tried to implement as part of my self-care, rewards. Like if I ever need to celebrate anything, I go and get a facial then. But when I got the news that my mortgage was going up $600 a month, I started to think in a lack mindset of, okay, Steph, like you need to budget differently. You can't be spending money the same way. What should I limit? Should I be going to this facial? Like, should I cancel it? And I remember thinking the whole week, like, should I cancel this facial? Should I not be going? And My money mindset was like, yeah, Steph, no more facials, cancel the appointment. But my abundance mindset was thinking, you are absolutely not starting to think like that. We didn't do all this work and get this far to me to start to tell myself that I'm going back to this lack mentality. So I'm like, no, I'm going to this facial, I'll figure it out. I don't have to worry about it. I'm abundant. Like, life is abundant. So I walk in for the facial and I was, again, just thinking about the dollar signs for some reason. It was just stuck in my mind about how much this facial was costing me, $150. Thinking like, should I be doing this? Is this irresponsible of me? My mortgage just went up by $600 a month. And when I arrived, they were like, oh, and by the way, someone called and paid for this for you. And I was like, what? And I just started to laugh and I was like, abundance, Steph, you are abundant. You are a powerful manifester. Of course someone called to pay for this for me because I was sitting here worried about this money and then now it's covered. So again, my job didn't give me any more money, but this is covered. So same thing I talk about in my course. You have to give and receive. You have to have your hand open to receive and open to give. So I kind of talked about trading with the universe. So here's another example to kind of help you with this concept. For my birthday in October, I wanted to take a few close friends out for dinner to my favorite restaurant. And it is an expensive restaurant, even with our locals discounts. And I was thinking like, you know what? I'm going to treat all my friends that are coming. They mean a lot to me. It's my birthday. And I'm going to pay for the entire dinner. So in my mind, I had budgeted about $450 to pay for this dinner. And I wasn't going to tell them until the end. I was just going to take the bill. And I was kind of excited to do this for my friends. I'm like, yes, I'm going to buy everybody dinner. They're going to be so stoked. So at the end of dinner, we got appetizers, we got bottles of wine, we got dessert, we got lots to share. It was an amazing dinner. At the end, I'm like, hey, I'll take the check. And my friends were like, what? Like, no. And I was like, no, I want to get this for you guys. And the waiter said to me, actually, the check's already been paid for. And I was like, what? And another one of my friends at the table had paid for the bill. And I was just like, it's my birthday. Like, I wanted to buy this for you guys. And she's like, no, it's like my gift to you. But again, another way of abundance and money coming in without you necessarily having to make money. So when you focus on these experiences, when you focus on like, hey, I was planning on spending this money and it came back to me. Hey, I was planning on doing this and it came back to me. When you start to see the money coming in, you start to see it everywhere. So there's 2 more limiting beliefs that I want to talk about because I think they're very important and I see them everywhere. The first one is about making too much or enough money and what that looks like for each person. So I have 2 examples for this. The first example is everyone going nuts right now about Beyonce being paid $25 million for 1 hour of performance. Everyone's like, that's too much money for 1 hour. And while I understand the side of like the top 1% make all the money, it's also like, who are we to say what too much money is? Who are we to value her time of what that is? And I experienced this at a much smaller scale, but I used to work in a hotel and I worked in housekeeping. And I found out after a few years in housekeeping, I was like moving up the ranks in housekeeping. I was a housekeeping supervisor. I worked from 8 a.m. till 5 p.m. every day. And I started figuring out how much the banquets people made. So the servers in banquets, so like doing the weddings, doing the special events. And I was like, oh my God, they're making like $30 an hour. And this was like a decade ago. So this was a lot of money now, and it was a lot of money back then. And I remember switching over, and they were kind of like, why do you want to move? You're a supervisor. Why do you want to come be a banquet server? And I literally said, because they make double the money and work less hard. I'd rather serve and be a bartender than be a housekeeping supervisor running my bum off from morning till night. And I learned a lot of lessons in banquets, but the first one was, I remember my last paycheck in housekeeping was for almost 120 hours of work. It was for 2 weeks, and the pay was $1,600 after taxes and after my rent and everything came out. My first paycheck in banquets was for 60 hours, half the amount, and I made $1,900. I made more money for half the amount of hours, and I was blown away. I was like, I worked half the amount of hours and I made $300 more. This is crazy. And it was me blasting through my limiting beliefs around money, having to work hard for it, all of these things. I was like so happy to be a banquet server, working half the hours, having my life back, and having more money. But there was this big stigma around how much banquet servers made, and we weren't supposed to tell anybody how much money we made. And there was always disputes about the grat. So how the pay worked was we got paid a certain amount of an hour. I think it was like $11 plus grat. And grat changed every pay scale. So grat could be, I think the lowest I ever saw grat was like $6 or $9. The highest I ever saw it was $38. So you would get $38 per hour on top of your $11 per hour. And there was always disputes about grat, if it was right, if it was this, or if it was that. And whenever we brought issues up to the higher ups about these concerns, it was always told to us, you make enough money, don't complain. You make more than almost everyone in this hotel, don't complain. You guys shouldn't be complaining about how much money you make. And the point wasn't that we were complaining about how much money we were making. We were saying that it was unfair how it was being distributed. So, for example, if the hotel made $100,000 in banquets would add an 18% service fee to that. And yes, the full 18% didn't go to the banquets. There's other things going on. But it was like a very big discrepancy in grat. Like sometimes it just didn't make sense. And there was people in the sales office who would tell us like, yeah, if they ever like need money, they just go into the grat pool and take it. It was just a very shady thing. And no matter how many times over the years banquet servers tried to go to the higher ups, tried to speak to someone, try to go to the boss and be like, hey, can there be some transparency? Can we understand how grat works? Can we understand where the 18% is going? Can we know that we get 10% of that? Can we have some kind of understanding of what's going on? The answer was always, you make enough money, kind of shut your mouth, like sit down and be quiet. But this is a limiting belief that have been shoved down our throats. If you make a certain amount of money, it's like, oh, you don't get to speak up. You don't get to have a voice. You don't get to have problems because you make so much money. And that was a thing that I really had to unlearn. Even now, talking about money, I think about that. I was like, I remember being shushed in the office. When I would open my paycheck and see grat was $35, I'm like, whoa, grat was good this week. Everyone's like, shh, don't tell anybody, don't tell anybody, don't tell anybody. And it's been like that. And there's so many things in our lives that just push us down like that. And this is where our beliefs come from. The last little rant about money that I want to have is about taxes. For some reason, the more money you make, the more people talk about taxes. And it's interesting that like, if you worked a salary job, no one's ever like, but how much are you paying in tax? But there's this limiting belief that like, you're going to be punished for making more money. And like, yes, you make more money, you pay more taxes. That's how it works. So would you not like me to make more money so I just don't have to pay more taxes? And it's just such an interesting limiting belief of like, oh no, you have to pay more if you work more. Yeah, that's kind of the whole point. And as someone who saves for taxes every single month, I put 25% to 30% of my earnings in an account that is just for taxes. So at the end of the year, when the government says you owe us X thousands of dollars, I'm like, yeah, here you go. It's set aside for you. This isn't mine. If I had a paycheck, my employer would be doing this for me. And now I do it. But it's, again, other people's limiting beliefs, other people who don't pay taxes properly, other people who are doing whatever that are like, oh, you make a lot of money, you have to pay a lot of tax on that. If you make that more money, then you have to pay tax on that. Oh my God, what do you pay in taxes every year? That only becomes an issue or a conversation when people are making a certain amount of money. But it's a limiting belief, and it's usually your limiting belief if it's coming out of your lips. I wanted to talk about that because manifesting money is something everybody can do, and everybody can do easily as soon as you switch that switch in your brain. And mine switched for me a few years ago, and it has just been life-changing. There are a lot of things you can do to work with your limiting beliefs around money. The first thing is identify them. Identify what it is. Is it making money, saving money, having more money than you need, paying taxes, working hard for money? Whatever you believe, you have to figure out what are your limiting beliefs around money, and then you can work on them from there. This is what we do in PSYCH-K. You can have a PSYCH-K session where we can focus all about money and all the statements that you want. So if you're bad at saving money, and you know you can't save money, or you know you have a hard time saving money, your statement would be, it's easy and fun for me to save money. I like to save money. Money comes easily to me. Whatever you want your statement to be positively stated for PSYCH-K. There's a million things you can do for manifesting money. I have so many podcast episodes you can go back and listen to. Stories that I've told of how I've manifested things, my house, my dog, money, months, big months, whatever you want, finding money on the floor, getting job opportunities that give lots of money, whatever it is. And I also have a workshop. It's my Let's Manifest Money workshop. It's $33 Canadian. It's about $24 USD. I will link that down below. It is my top 9 tips for manifesting money. People have seen so much success with that workshop. So if you want a little bit more help, that's a really accessible way to learn about this. But I also feel like it's an ongoing thing. I'm constantly finding new limiting beliefs where I'm like, ooh, here's a good one. Ooh, my mortgage went up by $600. I now have to change everything, all my spending habits. No, I don't. I just need to relook at things. I can still, buy strawberries if I want. I can still have a facial if I want, but I might have to be a little bit more mindful than I was before. So there's going to be a lot of things that happen in your life that are going to change your limiting beliefs. But just remember that you are in charge of your thoughts, and we can change our limiting beliefs. So you all know I can sit here and rant about money and manifesting forever. I will stop for now, but I hope this was helpful. I hope this made you think about your limiting beliefs around money. I hope this expanded you. I hope this got you thinking about what is possible for you. But I hope you all go out and find money on the floor today after listening to this. And if you do, DM me, because I love receiving DMs when you find money on the floor. But until next week, Middlers, when I see you in your ears, I hope you have a wonderful week. Leave the podcast a rating and a review wherever you are listening. I appreciate it so, so much. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, it's @mediuminthemiddle. All my bookings are done through my website, themediuminthemiddle.com. And as always, everything is linked below. Bye, everybody.